And finally, as a reminder, this coming week is our national push to reach the Handicapped Week. A survey conducted in 2010 shows that only 50% of the disabled are going to church compared to 57% of normal people. We've received many of your church's selections of who to have as a special guest speaker, but are still waiting for some. Please be sure to let us know who you had and what was the reason they are handicapped. Holy shnikes! Is that this week? How the heck did I forget? That's wonderful that you have the ability to come to our church. Really wanted to learn how to reach out to those who are less than us. Oh, sorry. Okay, do you have any questions? Yes, we do have a handicap spot. Sometimes Aunt Evie parks in it because of her gout, but I'll make sure it's clear. It's the closest space to the sidewalk. Yes, it's unpaved, but don't worry. It's only about 20 feet through the grass before the step to our sidewalk. Oh yeah, that would make it hard. Well, we could have a couple of young, strong guys lift you up. Your motorized wheelchair weighs that much? No, I don't think I'd feel comfortable having them lift that much up onto our stage. I'm sorry that you can't make it. I apologize. Our budget does not allow us to pay a speaker's fee to you and for an American Sign Language interpreter. As your email has made it clear that you will not lower your rates, greedy person, we will be unable to engage you for our event. God be with you. And send. I understand that he's housebroken and trained. Yes, I understand. But we have new carpet all throughout the chapel. Couldn't you just tie him up outside and one of us could just lead you through the pews and up the stairs by hand? Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And so, due to a bunch of people being inflexible or unavailable, we were not able to have a disabled speaker this week. But I encourage each and every one of you in my church family to reach out to those who are handicapped and find out why they aren't coming. God's word and his house are for everyone. Now please stand as we sing, I'll arise to my feet when I hear my Jesus call.
So gender is just a social construct, and believing in God is a crutch. When you mix them together and give them a whirl, what do you got? Atheist T-girl!
Title III prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in the activities of places of public accommodations. Businesses that are generally open to the public and that fall into one of 12 categories listed in the ADA, such as restaurants, movie theaters, schools, daycare facilities, recreation facilities, and doctor's offices, and require newly constructed or altered places of public accommodation, as well as commercial facilities privately owned, non-residential facilities such as factories, warehouses, or office buildings to comply with the ADA standards. Religious entities are exempt from the requirements of Title III of the ADA. A religious entity, however, would be subject to the employment obligations of Title I if it has enough employees to meet the requirements for coverage. Hello everyone, it's me, Alanis, aka Atheist T-Girl. Before I start, I want to give a few disclaimers. First, I am not disabled, so I'm speaking on this subject as an outsider. I've had my script reviewed by a professional editor who specializes in the field of disability, to make sure my language is as inclusive as possible. But if there is anything wrong in it, that comes down to me. And if I say anything ableist, I ask that you please call me out and let me know my mistakes. Second, I have included a list of disabled YouTubers to watch if you'd like to learn more on disability and to learn from those who know the best in the field. 3. The subject I'm about to cover has way too much for me to cover in one video. I will be limiting what I'm talking about to the Church and the 1990 ADA Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, and how they interact with each other. But there are plenty of other obstacles for the disabled, including attitudes of the people in the church, languages used by people, and much, much more. I have a friend named Allie who, due to a condition she was born with, has to use a wheelchair. She was talking to me about a church service she went to on Easter. This was at a church she had never been to before. She was going to see a relative perform in the band, but came out of the experience with bad taste in her mouth. The church had set up a special refreshment center for attendees, but they had placed it in the middle of a grassy, sandy field. While she was in the service, she had to sit in the middle of an aisle because they had not put a place for wheelchairs to be able to park, much less places for their attendants or friends to sit with them. Finally, part of the service required going up to the altar, which was at the top of multiple stairs. Being naive, I responded to her that she should probably contact the ADA and report them for violations. Her response floored me. Churches are not required to comply with the ADA. I was once struck in a Schrödinger moment of belief and disbelief. On one hand, I trusted her and believed she would tell me the truth, but on the other, the sheer absurdity of a group whose whole mission is to be there for others, being exempt from rules to make sure they would be, is just ludicrous. But I quickly opened the box and collapsed a moment by remembering all the other events and actions of ableism my friend has told me about. So I was left with the question, why are they exempt? My first search for why brought me to Wikipedia, and the answer I got was a bit less than satisfactory. Quote, the debate over the Americans with Disabilities Act led some religious groups to take opposite positions. The Association of Christian Schools International opposed the ADA in its original form, primarily because the ADA labeled religious institutes public accommodations, and thus would have required churches to make costly structural changes to ensure access for all. The cost argument advanced by the ACSI and others prevailed in keeping religious institutions from being labeled as public accommodations. Citation needed. Church groups such as the National Association of Evangelicals, you'll hear about them later, testified against the ADA's Title I employment provisions on grounds of religious liberty. The NAE believed that the regulation of the internal employment of churches was an improper intrusion of the federal government. As Wikipedia often does, it gave me a short overview of the issue, but with little nuance or in-depth explanation. But it did give me a few places to start looking. Little did I know it would bring me on a journey that would often upset and anger me. The original version of the ADA had terms in it that made churches and other religious institutions, such as schools, responsible for following the ADA just as any other business. It did so in defining a public institution in a way that included them. This version of the bill came at odds between the presidential administration's view of what the ADA should be and the Senate's. The president's admin's view was that it should exclude churches. Based on what I have been able to find written at the time, a large influence of changes that were made to the bill to make it what we have today came from a William Bentley Ball. Most of his constitutional arguments were for the freedom of religion from governmental influence. I have seen claims that he was hired by the church associations to lobby for the changes in the ADA bill, but I have been unable to find an actual source to prove this. So case could be made that he argued for the changes on his own will and without any push from the government. However, a package of correspondence from Daniel R. Heimbach, who at the time was the Deputy Executive Secretary and Associate Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, he had really long business cards with that title, to William L. Roper, who is the Director of Office Policy Development for the White House. Included Bell's arguments against the constitutionality of the amendment, along with a list of churches who disagreed with the amendment, a letter of disapproval from the National Association of Evangelicals, I told you they'd come back, makes it clear that Bell was not working alone in pushing for changes in the ADA. Before we go on, it should be noted that there were also pushes from businesses and business associations against the ADA, but these were disregarded by both the Senate and administration. The attitude of this is quite well summed up in this quote. These costs will be unrelated to the productivity of disabled workers, notes Carolyn Weaver, an economist with the Americans Enterprise Institute, a public policy research organization in Washington. My butt. As such, she argues the legislation will secure higher wages and expanded employment opportunities for some disabled people while imposing a net economic drain on society. Now, back to the churches. Bell argued against the inclusion of churches in the ADA on the grounds that 1. It would cause too much interference of the church's business by the government, and 2. It would be too expensive for smaller churches and schools. This argument was echoed by the NAE in their letter. But a particularly irksome revile is the introduction to their letter. Quote, the goals of your bill, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1989, are laudable in seeking to accommodate the special needs of the handicapped and thus to help them realize their full capabilities. We commend your goals. The NAE has been active in urging the needs of the handicapped be met. As our October 1989 convention, the NAE has adopted a resolution entitled Ministry to Persons with Disabilities. I have included a link to their document, Ministry to Persons with Disabilities, and it seems like a remarkably forward-thinking document for 20 years ago, which makes the rest of their letter that they sent even more irritating. In it, they put forward an argument that the law should be a do as we say, not as we do, as they should be excluded from it. In the end, the bill was passed, written in a way to exclude churches from the ADA, but churches were encouraged to try to reach this level. And how did this work out? In my intro, when I was pretending to talk to a wheelchair user, the church I described was the one I grew up in. It had no paved parking. There were steps up to get to the sidewalk, and there's no way to be a musician or a speaker on a podium without climbing steps. The most recent Google view does show that accessibility parking has been added, but it leads to a sidewalk that seems to only have steps leading off of it. My friend had her experience on Easter, which is an unspoken sermon that those with disabilities are only tolerated to a point. If you're looking for a view not biased by atheism on how churches handle accessibility, check out Shannon Dingle's article on it. Written in 2018, the opening line reflects what was seen in 1989. Going to a new church as a disabled person is a brave act. Why? Because churches have a history of being unwelcome to us. Final remarks. While doing this research, I posted a few of the quotes and questions I had online on my Facebook timeline, and I received a few questions I felt needed to be mentioned here. In response to the first part of the letter from the NAE, I was asked, so has their position changed in 30 years? Is this organization still in existence? I did check and found that the organization does exist and has grown since this letter was issued by them. They have a search feature on their public letters and memorandums. Funny, this letter isn't listed. But while I could find a policy they mentioned in the letter, I could find no new updates on accessibility issues. I have sent an email asking if they have any further info or if they still stand behind the letter, and I will update if I hear back from them. In response to the article from Shannon Dingle, I was asked, not to be insensitive, but good? Anything that keeps people out of the theistic church is a good thing. From a utilitarian perspective, even if the reasons behind it were trash. I'm an atheist, and I do often think that the world would be better off without religion. and I quite understand the position and sometimes even think about being an anti-theist. So the question does have a point that I can understand. But maybe because I'm an evil SJW, or maybe because of the empathy we atheists tend to mention while stating how we get our morality, I can't agree with this question. The ideas of restricting anyone from access to what others in life have simply because they have a disability is repugnant to me. But I do understand that this is an emotional argument, so I will give what I feel is a logical one. Human nature is to desire that which they can't have. Take away or forbid someone from something, and they will just want it more, if only for the challenge of obtaining it. As I feel religion is ultimately a bad idea, I think the best way to stop is not to keep people from having it, but instead let them have full access and let them see why it is such a bad idea. And finally, I want to get it out there so I don't see it in the comments. If I do, I know you didn't make it to the end of the video. Not all churches approved of the actions of Bell and the NAE. Not all churches are ignorant to their struggle, and some do work to make their experiences as inclusive as possible. So please, no, not all churches in my comments. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to ding ding ding, ring that bell, so that you know when I put up new videos. If you have any questions, please be sure to put them into my comments. Or you can reach me at atheist_t_girl on Twitter. As always, with my comments, this is a non-trans video. I will not reply to any questions about trans people, or any accusations that I'm a man in a dress, or anything else. They will be deleted. If you have questions about this subject, please put them here. And as always, I hope y'all have a great day.